Hi, I'm Ross Barefoot with Horizon Web Marketing, and we're pretty excited about a change in Google's Search Console. Yes, I know it's pathetic what we SEO people get excited about. In any case, Google has just introduced, about a month ago, the domain type of property in Search Console. And this means finally, after years and years of begging, we who are trying to make use of Search Console are able to now manage all the variations of a domain in one place. So the variations being, if you have a subdomain, www, non-www. If you're in search at all, you know what I'm talking about. In any case, the only catch to this is that it does require a more difficult verification process, and that's what the video you're about to watch is about. It'll show you and walk you through how to add a DNS record so that you can make use of this new domain type property in Google Search Console. Now you will notice this is actually lesson 4 in a series, so you'll kind of see where we break into it, but it gives you everything you need to know to be able to set this up, so we're putting it out as a freestanding video. So sit back, enjoy, and at the end of it I'm sure you'll be just as excited as we are. Okay, so here we are at the last possible way to verify a website with Google Search Console, and this one's a little bit more involved and a little bit more advanced. So I want to go back and review a piece of information that will help make it make sense why we would want to choose this particular route as opposed to the ones we've been using in the past. So first of all, let's remember that there are several versions of any website, and those would be the versions with or without the HTTPS. In other words, whether your site is running secure or not secure. Then there's also the versions of your site that carry a www, which is technically a subdomain. And then you might also have additional subdomains. All of those are considered technically by Google to be different website properties. And all of those do have a common domain that you can see running through all of them, which is mywebsite.com. So now let's apply this to the most recent search, the most recent example I've been using for this set of lessons, and that is Rocky Mountain Search Academy. So we've got a possible version of http://. Then we have a possible version of that same domain with S, which is the way it's running now with the secure protocol. Then there's also a non-secure version of the www version and a secure version of the www version. And some of these, depending on the history of the website and depending on other factors as to, for example, who's linking to your site and how they're linking to your site, you might see data in more than one of these particular properties when you add them to Google Search Console. And I don't have this running, but if I want to, for example, run a blog on a subdomain, it'd be the same principle. So if you're using the method we've been doing, which is the URL prefix method of verifying, you've got 5 properties. You would have to add each one separately, each of those above, and you would have to verify each. But you do have an alternate, and this is very new, and all of us in search are very grateful for Google having finally given us a mechanism for adding one property, which is the domain, in this case RockyMountainSearchAcademy.com, one time, one verification. But there's a hitch, and that is the verification that you have to use is DNS verification. And if you're familiar with DNS, DNS is basically the registration of domain names, an international system that's regulated under convention and basically allows websites to be matched up with people who are looking for a website address. And so when someone types in RockyMountainSearchAcademy.com, the DNS system, which is distributed and functions across thousands of computers carrying duplicates of DNS catalogs, basically, will know where to place that particular property, where to route the traffic, that is to say. So now that we have that under our belts, let's go ahead and get into the process of actually adding a property using the box on the left, the domain verification method. Here we are back at Google Search Console. Let's go into the verification screen that by now you should know pretty well. I've cleared it so that we can start fresh, and we're going to start with our usual process of adding a property. Do the drop down. Once again, just as a reminder, if you have already properties here, and you can have as many websites as you want tied into your Search Console account. If you had any, they'd show up here, and at the bottom of the list, you'd have an Add Property button just like that. And here we are back at the selector for which property type. And again, this is the part that Google just recently added just within the last couple of weeks. And so here we have the domain, and this is the first time we're using the box on the left. I'm going to go ahead and type in our demo, RockyMountainSearchAcademy.com. You notice that I'm not putting in anything like www, I'm not putting in HTTP, HTTPS, and this is technically, this is the domain name, RockyMountainSearchAcademy.com, and we'll click on Continue. And it'll go to verify, and this is a different screen than what we had got before, verify domain ownership. Now here you are restricted. You cannot use Google Analytics or Tag Manager. You can't put an HTML tag, anything like that. And the reason for that is the only way to really prove that you own the actual domain name is by messing with something called the DNS Record. And DNS stands for Domain Name Services, and as I explained before, this is basically the international network of directories that kind of match up website domain names like RockyMountainSearchAcademy.com or like yours with the location of a specific computer out there on the vast World Wide Web, so that when somebody types in a name, the internet can find a particular computer where that name is being hosted. And that's the whole, that's kind of a real quick 30-second explanation of the DNS system. It can get really complicated, all right? So we're going to try to keep it as basic as possible. You might need to do some other research if you find some stuff here where I'm not covering all of your knowledge gaps. What we're going to do is add something called a text record, a TXT record, to the DNS configuration. Okay, how do we go about that? One of the first things that you can do, and let me go back to the main screen, the main entry page for this particular website I'm going to recommend. It's called viewdns.info. There's countless sites out there you can go to find out information about a domain name. And you'll see down here there's a lot of different tools on this page, so I'm going to direct you to this one right here that says Domain IP, and it's called a Whois. And as the little popover says, it display ownership information relating to a domain name or IP address. And I have typed in RockyMountainSearchAcademy.com. I'm going to click Go. And then this is the publicly available record for this particular domain name. You'll see that we have a lot of different things going on telling us about, for example, who is the registrar. That's the company where the name has been registered. And I'm using Namecheap right now, so that's the registrar. If it's publicly available, you'll also see who owns it. I have this right now protected, so you don't see that I own this domain name. But what I'm looking for is down here, you're going to look for whatever tool you use to conduct a Whois search. You're going to be looking for this right here that says Name Server. That's going to give you a clue to where you're going to make the changes you need to for Google Search Console. Now, if you are familiar with your hosting platform, this may give you a clue as to where you're going to make changes. The hosting platform I'm using for Rocky Mountain Search Academy is DreamHost, and they have what are called the name servers that basically provide all of the DNS information for my website to the World Wide Web. So when someone does a search for Rocky Mountain Search Academy, this information is what's pulled down and then used to navigate the DNS system. This tells me I need to make my changes at my hosting platform, I need to make my changes at DreamHost because they're the ones who are controlling the DNS records for my account. So that's the first step, is get a clue as to where your DNS records are residing. For most websites, this is going to be the host where you are hosting your website, but that's not always the case. Your name servers can be, for example, hosted at your name registrar. Sometimes they can be offloaded to a different service. I'm not going to cover all the variations of this because for 90% of you out there, it's going to be going to your host. Now, DreamHost does not have cPanel, and cPanel is what we looked at, for example, when we did some messing around with some other sites, and I showed you how to navigate through cPanel. So what I'm going to do is take you back and just show you, if you are using cPanel, the changes that we're going to talk about can be made within cPanel, the cPanel for typically for your website where it's hosted. And here's a typical cPanel entry screen. You're not going to find anything on this screen that says DNS. You have to go down and take a look at the section down here that says domains. So if you see domains, there's going to be a lot of different tools that are used within cPanel to manage your domains. One of those is Zone Editor. So if you click on Zone Editor, what it will allow you to do at this point is it will allow you to add a DNS record. For Rocky Mountain Search Academy, DreamHost does not use cPanel. They use their own proprietary mechanism. And I'm going to go ahead and log into their administrative panel for the various websites that I have running on DreamHost. Your host is going to be a little bit, it might either be cPanel. If it's DreamHost, it'll look like this. If you have any confusion, usually your web hosting provider will give you tech support either through chat or through a phone call, and you just ask them, where do I edit the DNS records for my domain? Over here on the left in DreamHost, I'm going to click on Domains, then Manage Domains, and then I'm going to scroll down and look for Rocky Mountain Search Academy, and it's right here. Notice there's a choice here that actually specifically says DNS. So I will click on that choice for DNS. Notice it says this area is for advanced users only. I'm going to give you a word of caution and a word of reassurance at the same time. The word of caution is if you make changes to your DNS and you don't know what you're doing, you could completely take your website offline. That's typically the case if you're going to make a change to a record, and again, you really don't know how this functions. Now, the word of reassurance is this: adding a TXT record to your DNS is usually a pretty safe operation. So even if you add the text record incorrectly, as long as you add it as a text or a TXT record, you really shouldn't be doing anything that's going to endanger your site. So this is a fairly safe operation. Now I'm going to scroll down here and notice there's a choice that says add a custom DNS record to Rocky Mountain Search Academy. And notice, see, the key thing is here's the DNS record relates to the root, to the basic level domain. Now look down here where it says your custom DNS records for Rocky Mountain Search Academy. There is already a TXT record entered, and it already says Google Site Verification. However, if I go back to my instance of Search Console, I'm not going to click Verify right now, but if I click Verify, it's not going to verify. Why is that if there's already a DNS record? Well, the key is we're going to copy this here, but look at just the first part just to see just how this particular alphanumeric key starts. XOJRF, all caps. Now if we go back to where we were looking at the DNS record, notice how this is different. See, it's a different key. And the reason is your DNS, this text record that Google gives you to enter, is unique to your login with Search Console. So we could have all sorts of text records here based on who has demonstrated ownership or management responsibility for the site. and who has added a DNS record. Since we don't see one along the lines of what Google has given us, now's where we need to add one. The first thing we need to do, and most DNS editors allow you to select a type. And here's a drop down, and there's the type right there, TXT. And now additionally, you can enter a value, which is what Google gave us. All right, you can't see the whole thing, but this is what I copied and pasted. So Google site verification. And we can add a comment in this particular system. Often you don't have that ability. And I don't think a comment is necessary because just to see Google site verification tells me why this record was added. Let's go ahead and add the record now. All right, and it takes me back to the dashboard for DNS. Note what it says right here. Our DNS servers will start serving this record within a couple of minutes. Sometimes it can take quite a while for this process of verification to work because DNS changes don't occur immediately on most platforms. And you might have to wait a couple of hours, you might even have to wait till the next day before you're able to do this domain ownership via DNS record. Now, one way you can keep track of it is by going back to this tool we used before. Remember, view DNS info, view DNS.info. And there is a tool there where we can take a look at the DNS records for a particular domain, and that way we can see if this record has been published and is it accessible. So let's look down here at the various DNS records that are publicly available for Rocky Mountain Search Academy, and we can see right here we've got a number of TXT records, and I've got two different Google site verifications. This has been published really quickly because remember we looked at the first part of the string and that's what it was. Therefore, let's go back here to Google Search Console and give verification a try. So we'll go ahead and click verify. It still has not, the verification has failed. And notice what it says here. You might need to wait a few minutes before Google sees your changes to the text records, to the TXT records. Therefore, what we're going to do right now is I'm going to pause this instructional video and we'll come back to it after we've let this sit for, I'll give it about an hour or two and we'll give it another try. I'll talk to you soon, and for you, it'll be like in 2 seconds. Okay, so actually I've let a couple hours go by here, although I'm sure the time seemed shorter in terms of this video. Let's go back to this now and see if we've given it enough time for Google to pick up on the changes we've made. So we'll click OK. It'll take us back to this verification screen again, and we will click Verify. And there we go, success. We have now verified that particular domain, that is Rocky Mountain Search Academy. And now notice Google will tell us, welcome to your new domain property, and it'll show us some of what I've already been showing you, namely that it's going to be aggregating all the data from these various variations of your domain that might exist and live online. Now, that having been said, there may be reasons why you want to split your data into different accounts. And if that's the case, you can still go back and add those separate properties and verify them. And in this case, you can go through and use the DNS verification without having to make changes because your record already is showing up. So one way or the other, if you don't mind and can figure out how to mess around with your DNS records, this is definitely the best way to go, in my opinion, and I'm very grateful that Google has finally done this after years and years of not having a mechanism to do something like that. So I'll be back in a moment with a few closing words, and in the meantime, congratulations on getting through a pretty technical set of lessons. I hope it's been useful to you. Well, I hope you're able to follow that instruction, but if you weren't, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and contact us for more information. In the meantime, if this has been useful to you, please hit that red subscribe button below. Also, hit the little alarm bell next to it so you actually get notifications, and give us a thumbs up if it's been useful to you. That way Google will know that this video is valuable for somebody else as well. In any case, thanks for watching, and also leave any questions in the comments. We'll be glad to follow up with them. Talk to you next time. Bye.